there aren't that many companies here who have certifications. I was going to start talking about how exciting certifications are, but maybe that's just me. I'm actually the kind of person who will stay up past midnight reading the latest legislation or certification. You can ask my husband, because I find it so exciting. But this presentation isn't about the details of certifications. This is more about the overall concept. And Badger as a company has a lot of certifications. Down on the bottom there are several of the certifications that we hold on our products and for our companies. And because I really genuinely love certification so much, when I was asked to give this presentation, I really dug deep, and I actually contacted some of the founders of these certifications and programs that I really respect. And I asked them, what makes a certification matter? And I kind of wanted to get into whether or not there are any trends in what they were saying. And actually, there were. And interestingly enough, what they said ran contrary to what I think a lot of people think about when they think about the benefit of a certification. So, Darwin's theory of evolution. Most of you probably know that. And in his first book, he talked about natural selection. And later on, he called that survival of the fittest. And he also talked about random genetic mutation. Now, this idea of survival of the fittest is ingrained in who we are as companies, or at least we think it might be. And this idea that we have to go out there and be better than everyone else, or we have to differentiate ourselves from everyone else, that's this idea of evolution. And what's interesting, though, is that Darwin's theory of evolution explained almost all of the diversity that we have in species. Everything out there to the right. But what I have circled there is that little tiny jump from a single-celled organism to a multi-celled organism. That right there is actually the most significant part of evolution, not all the rest. That's actually the biggest leap. And Darwin couldn't explain that. He couldn't explain it with survival of the fittest. He couldn't explain it with natural selection or even random genetic mutation. He just didn't know how that was possible. How is it possible to create novel species? And the rest of all of that evolution couldn't have taken place if you hadn't gone from a single-celled organism to a multi-celled organism. So, getting into biology here. If you look here on the right, you've got one little single-celled organism, and then you look at that classic biology picture of your multi-celled organism, and you see some similarities there. That jump, that massive jump from a single-celled organism to a multi-celled organism came from something called endosymbiosis. This is a symbiotic relationship so powerful that you actually have two completely separate species that become one. And that is a kind of collaboration and community that is core to evolution, and it goes beyond. It's much more powerful than survival of the fittest. So back to the topic at hand here. When we talk about the evolution of capitalism, the evolution from the 20th century to the 21st century is really a shift from understanding a shareholder corporation, which is more in line with the survival of the fittest, to a stakeholder corporation, which is more about community and collaboration. That's what you guys are all doing here today. This is a community. We're collaborating to make change, to create a novel species, which we can't do just with survival of the fittest. And so you've heard this mentioned a couple of times today, but this idea of evolution is the stakeholder corporation, where we're looking at social, environment, economic. We're combining these together, we're working together. This is a symbiotic evolution. So, thinking about certifications, in the last 20 years, we had this incredible diversity of certifications that came about. We have USDA Certified Organic, we have Fair Trade, NPA Natural, Energy Star, LEEDS, FSC. Each one of these certifications certify your building, your products, a part of your company. But what we're seeing a transition towards is not just good products, but good companies, and not just individual good companies, but communities of good companies working together. And so I wanted to use an example of the Certified B Corporation, because the B Corporation isn't just a certification that sets you apart. It's a certification that brings you together. And as we know from looking at our little evolutionary lesson there, the most substantial and significant evolution comes from working together, not from working apart from each other or differentiating. So when you become a B Corp, you have to sign the Declaration of Interdependence. So you're not saying that we're going to be independent. You're not saying that we're going to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. You're saying that by becoming a B Corp, we are going to join this community. We are going to become part of a movement, and that movement is going to change the world. So when we talk about a certification that matters is beyond the technicality of differentiating you from other brands, of the transparency that it offers. All of these things are important. All of these things make certifications that matter. But when we talk about a certification that really matters, it's a certification that is going to start a movement. It's a certification that builds something and that brings us together. And in the last B Corp conference, they used this example of a cathedral. And they told the story of the traveler that goes into the village and sees 3 men working, and the first man, he asks what he's doing. He says, well, I'm hammering on the stone. And then the traveler asks the second man, well, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm providing food for my family. And when he asked the third man what he's doing, he said, well, I'm building a cathedral. Each one of these men were doing the exact same thing, but each one had a different vision of what they were doing. The cathedral is the idea of a new sector of the economy. The cathedral is what you're building. And so when you find a certification that matters, it's a certification that's building something, and you're building it together. And so coming back to what I originally was tasked with was coming up with what is a certification that matters. I really think that a certification that matters is not one that differentiates you, but it's one that brings us together. And through working together, we're able to build something incredible. We're able to create, whether it's a novel species in evolution or a novel sector of the economy. But what we're able to do together is much more significant. Thank you.